The anime kicks off with the coronation ceremony for the new queen of the country. However, shadowy figures are plotting to attack her after the ceremony in the royal chambers. Their objective is unclear, but we know this mysterious boy must eliminate Lashera to fulfill a promise that will return him to his former world, or rather, his true home. In this futuristic world, there are mechas called psychogens, which can only be piloted by experienced women. These mechas have the ability to destroy everything, much like in Evangelion. As they analyze an ancient real mecha, the enemies make their move, sending a white psychogens piloted by this boy. The alarm sounds, and everyone notices the appearance of a rare psychogens in the royal territory, which, by the way, is a floating island-like ship. The red-haired commander of the royal psychogens, Chiaya, decides to confront this creature, feeling capable of handling it. She rushes out, dons her very sensual suit, poses for a few seconds to let us admire her beauty, and then boards her ship to deal some serious blows. But things don't go as she expected. As she takes the hits herself, surprised by the enemy psychogen's ability, she is left in shock. We quickly realize that the boy was not alone, as his masked leader enters the queen's chamber to eliminate her. However, the queen shows no fear and tells him to come at her with his face uncovered. The man gets furious, and just as he tries to eliminate her, Shum, who is in charge of repairing machines and creating crazy weapons, intervenes. The waifu starts fighting the enemy, managing to inflict serious damage on the attack mechanism, forcing him to retreat. He is saved by a black psychogens, piloted by a very imposing and crazy waifu named Doll. As they flee, the boy is left behind. The mission is to capture him alive to interrogate him about the enemy's objectives. He uses a skill that consumes all the vital energy of the machine, putting himself in danger, but thanks to this, he manages to escape and reach Lashera. There, he pulls out a knife, but due to exhaustion and his mind being on the verge of collapse, he faints. The redhead takes advantage of this to finish him off, but the queen says to calm down and keep him alive, as his skills could be useful to her in the future. The problem is that the laws there do not allow a man to pilot a psychogens, as it would cause a lot of uproar and distrust in the queen, so they must keep it a secret. While they have the boy locked up, they try to extract information from him and only learn that his name is Kenshir, our protagonist. Lashera knows that they will come for him at any moment to save him, or rather to do something to him, as they can't leave someone who was with the enemy alive. At night, Doll arrives to rescue him. Once on the enemy ship, they realize that the protagonist had a tracker and communicator with him, allowing the queen to hear what they were saying, including the fact that the boy is from another world. As they attempt to send him to meet St. Peter, the protagonist rebels and starts fighting everyone. Yes, he looks skinny, but the guy is like John Wick. While trying to escape, he is saved by an elf who also belongs to the kingdom. At that moment, the enemy ambushes the ship and returns to Lashera with the boy safe, although not quite safe, as he has a rare disease for which they have a vaccine. The detail is that while they administer the vaccine and look for some medicines, the masked man takes advantage of the moment when the royal guards have the mechas under repair to attack them with everything. The redhead and the ponytailed girl are in trouble, with the enemy psychogens pushing them to the limit until, to their surprise, the redhead's sister and the elf Aura arrive at the party. Both were off guard because they went to look for medicines for the protagonist. Aura encountered Doll and had a brief chase, using a dark elf field to neutralize and knock out Doll. Back at Lashara's home, the masked man decides to flee the scene again, seeing himself surrounded by enemies. This same man speaks with his superior, who tells him he must handle Lashera himself as soon as possible, as she has entered sacred ground. Furthermore, he won't be able to count on Doll, as the waifu won't wake up for a few days. Meanwhile, the protagonist wakes up after receiving treatment, greeted by some impressive attributes in his face and a smile from all the waifus. The next morning, our protagonist has the best luck ever, as he's helped by many waifus to take a nice bath. Meanwhile, Lashera tells the redhead that all they know about the protagonist is that he was trained in some unknown facilities by several people who hid their faces. There's no further information about him, such as where he comes from, if he has any family, or anything else that might give a specific clue about who he worked for, or rather, who manipulated him. The thing is, they dress the protagonist in elegant clothes because now he will be the queen's close servant, as Lashera has grown fond of him. Moreover, since they are heading to sacred land, he needs to look presentable, but most importantly, maintain a low profile to avoid suspicion that he is not from this world. In the sacred land, after passing through several filters, they arrive at the academy, a place full of girls who will become the next psychogens. They go there because the redhead and the girl with ponytails are finally graduating and will now be official psychogens. While walking through the facilities, they encounter a blonde guy named Mest. Chiaya, upon seeing him, recalls her battle against the mysterious man, as the sword skills he had were very similar to her childhood friend Mest. But it would be very illogical for a traitor to be in sacred land, working from the inside to eliminate the country's queen. After that, Lashera meets her cousin cousin, who is also a princess, and they don't get along very well. They start arguing to see who has the better skirt, and the protagonist has Tio choose, which helps him as he meets Yukain, a beautiful waifu who clearly wants the protagonist Tio fill her heart, with good feelings, of course. While the conversation continues outside the institute, the girl with ponytails arrives to inform them that there will be a duel. Chihaya must be present for it to be a real duel because these women intend to defeat the girl with ponytails to get the queen's attention, as the girls are wanderers, basically unemployed psychogens. The duel takes place in a ring with a special field where only those machines can function. As in the entire sacred land, the use of machines is prohibited since the power that makes them work is blocked. The fight begins, and Shum seems to be struggling, but the protagonist, seeing her movements, practically tells everyone that the fight is already over. The girl makes the enemy believe she's at a disadvantage to boost their ego and make them overconfident, eventually causing them to fall out of the ring. After several hours, the protagonist, bored and with nothing to do, leaves to wander around the sacred land. He was supposed to stay in his room, but this guy, being quite bold, goes out for a walk and meets Aura, the elf princess of the forest. She tells her guards not to attack the protagonist because he's her friend, so they leave him alone. In that place, he finds Ulite struggling, who is basically Lashara's right-hand man. The guy is there, suffering from a fever, and the protagonist gives him a homemade remedy from his world, which is legendary. After the guy recovers, we realize that he is planning something with someone, as a mysterious voice, not physically present, asks him if the preparations and sensors are ready. Days pass, and Lashara tells the protagonist that he needs to get a job while they are in sacred land. She can't pay him with the country's funds because that would require revealing the protagonist's identity, which would cause many problems since he's a secret servant. Kenshir, excited, agrees. On his way to the meeting room with the headmistress, several girls want to talk to him because, well, their hormones are in overdrive since he's the only handsome guy. Once he meets the old lady, she explains all the tasks he will need to perform. There, he is introduced to a very muscular woman who takes him through an underground area that feels like another world. This woman takes him to another person who assigns him his tasks. His mission is to clean rooms and organize everything, a job he completes quite quickly. He finishes so fast that he even helps his superior, who hasn't completed his tasks yet. After cleaning, while running an errand, he meets Aura. The elf tells him that she was coincidentally looking for an employee from Sacred Land, but since the protagonist works there now, she takes him to a cliff where she lost a very valuable handkerchief given to her by her mother. Without thinking much, the protagonist descends the mountain like Tarzan, leaving the elf girl impressed and with a racing heart. Later, Aura requests a good tray of food from the kitchen, and the protagonist is in charge of preparing and delivering it. Here, we meet Lithia, a girl who feels very powerful and treats the protagonist like trash. In any case, since things are going well for him, Lashara and Mexia devise a plan to generate good income. They teach the protagonist to give sensual massages. However, this causes problems because the girls who receive the massages end up being amorous all day long. The headmistress finds out about this, and after the waifus want to beat up the protagonist and Mexia, they end up destroying a large part of the institute. Now they have to carry out repair work, assisted by several workers sent as reinforcements. After several days of repairing the institute, and after Lashara, Maria, and the student council president were excluded for being incompetent at manual labor, the protagonist, with the help of Aura, finishes all the repairs. As a reward, he is treated to a luxurious bath with all the waifus, where they hold a meeting to announce that classes will resume. Yes, they gathered just for that, and well, also to check out the protagonist. Meanwhile, Lashara finds out that her swan has holes, which could be caused by the kore, animals that are professional diggers. Chihaya tells the queen she suspects it might be a large kore. That night, while on watch, they catch the protagonist digging a secret hole. When questioned, he says he was looking for pure crystals as a hobby, reminding him of his sister's crystalline spaceship. Lashara is surprised to hear this because in his normal Earth, an ordinary citizen shouldn't have a spaceship. The protagonist realizes that the only spaceships in his world were missiles sent by the government into space, like satellites. He also remembers being in that spaceship, but it could have been hypnosis, or maybe it was all true, and he might be from the future. During the conversation, the redhead starts arguing with the protagonist and accidentally breaks a precious chain, which she repairs every night. However, due to a mishap, the protagonist escapes again. While passing by Juan's workshop, he sees a suspicious person leaving. He rushes to see what's happening and knocks the person down, realizing it's a girl. However, a masked figure creates a distraction, allowing both to escape. Or so we thought. The protagonist listens to the ground, determining the direction they went. Continuing his pursuit, he meets Mest, who's protecting his beloved maid. Mest tells him where the enemy went and secretly asks his waifu if she obtained the necessary documents. During the chase, Kenshin gets hit with a flash bomb. Despite being blinded, he uses his hearing to guide him, but the enemy is too too agile, quickly disappearing. Soon after, Mexia's impressive attributes appear, as she was patrolling the area looking for the intruders. But once again, our protagonist wins with the pair of melons protecting him. The next morning, the director calls Lashera, informing her that Kenshin will study at Sacred Land, recommended by the church and high-ranking professors. Lashera agrees, but the protagonist is warned to keep his origins and the fact that he's a Psychogen secret. On his first day, it's clear he's become quite the ladies' man, with all the waifus interested in him. Luckily, he ends up in the same class as Maria. In a quick test where boys evaluate the girls' activities, Kenshin scores matcha teachers, impressing the director. But that's not all. In sword class, Mexia, his combat instructor, realizes Kenshin is on another level, telling the old lady he could even defeat her, his swordsmanship surpassing that of a master. The mischievous students, jealous of him, plan an ambush. However, one boy named Ceres isn't convinced about attacking. They all attack, but the protagonist effortlessly dodges them, leaving them exhausted. This mini-battle is witnessed by Mexia and Yukine, who quickly tells Maria what happened. They conclude that the protagonist is a Psychogen from another world, and his talent should not be wasted, thinking it would be great to have him on their team. In a scene change, the student council president meets with the other class representatives to announce that the protagonist will be part of the student council, helping with various special events and occasional small tasks. The rumor spreads quickly, and since these girls have a thing for the protagonist, they start investigating. The blonde troublemaker practically shouts by the pool that the protagonist is on the council, causing the girls to go wild and plan to capture him. What they intend to do to him remains a mystery, but it's clear the protagonist won't be able to handle them all. However, his physical abilities allow him to escape multiple times. During one of these escapes, he ends up in the president's room and notices that she seems unwell. Despite being chased, she tells him to keep moving but mentions that girls sometimes duel out of jealousy. Lithia, still sick, receives a special healing tea prepared by the protagonist after he escapes from the girls. Maria tells Yukine to keep an eye on the protagonist to rescue him from the girls. Yukine takes him to her room, where she tries to seduce him to join Maria's faction. However, her nerves get the best of her, and she faints in his arms in a compromising situation, one that will leave to your imagination. At the end of the day, they participate in a food gathering event in Aura's forest. The winner would get the protagonist, but if he won, he'd gain his freedom. Things go badly for the girls as they prepare horrible dishes, while Kensher creates a delicious feast. When he reveals the secret ingredients that give his dish its flavor, the girls are horrified to learn they are insects. In a change of scene, we discover that both blondes, Eulite and Mest, are enemies of Lashera. The older blonde is testing Mest's abilities to handle a special Psychogen, but his compatibility remains at 28%, while Dahl is the only one fit to use the device. After this scene, we see the protagonist and the others preparing for a vacation on a cruise ship with Lashara's mother and Maria's aunt, the beautiful Flora. Flora invites everyone on the trip as she wants to meet the protagonist. Mest and several classmates join the journey. Upon arrival, the protagonist notices Ceres is there, illegally with a girl he loves but cannot be with due to family disputes. While keeping the secret, we see the ship is being watched by a girl and a boy, bandits planning to attack the ship, kidnap Ceres and Mest, and steal the mechas on board. Upon arrival, they meet Flora, a stunning woman with impressive assets, who immediately takes a liking to the protagonist. She creates a pillow fight game where they have to bash each other and remove the ribbon holding their robes. The twist is that the girls usually wear nothing underneath, as is tradition. The game begins, and the protagonist, as expected, defeats all the waifus, creating some rather wonderful moments with Yukine, who makes him feel the true plot. After that night of chaos, the bandits are ready to execute their plan. At dawn, the bandit leader, a formidable woman, attacks with a mecha, delivering powerful blows. As explosions rock the ship, the girls defend the main base where they are cornered. However, the protagonist appears out of nowhere, taking down the attacker. He had run into Ceres' waifu while collecting supplies and saved her from some enemies. They ask the protagonist to find Aura and then go after Flora. He agrees and rushes off, skillfully dodging projectiles, to commandeer the mecha created by the pigtail waifu. With this machine, he makes his way to Flora's quarters, where she is thrilled to see him, often blocking his view with her ample assets. Meanwhile, Yukine and Chiaya search for Mest, who is negotiating with one of the bandits, proposing a deal to hire them all. Amid the chaos, the protagonist returns with the queen and fights the bandit leader, discovering that these mechas have the same sensitivity as a human. Striking weak points, the creature falls easily. Seeing trouble, the bandit calls for retreat and escapes, but the protagonist, regrouping with the girls, logically deduces that the bandits will stop at a safe location before heading to their main hideout. While Kensher and Aura verify this, Mest talks to the bandit leader, an ex-Psychogen. He suggests they could make more money by partnering with him rather than demanding ransom from the country. The girl mentions her plan to force him to marry one of the candidates, including herself. Seeing her assets, Mest quickly agrees, asking to be left alone with her, as it was time to use the mysterious tool. After some intimate time, Mest proposes a plan. When they come to rescue him, he should act grateful but ensure other bandits are among the hostages to stay close to the princesses and queens. Everything goes according to plan. The protagonist arrives with the mecha, causing havoc. The pigtail waifu steals the truck with the hostages, escaping the scene and leaving Ceres with his beloved to live peacefully outside the law. Though problematic, they lie, saying Ceres and the girl were lost in the collateral damage. Well, we then see that at the academy, one of the bandits has infiltrated as a student. This is because Mest managed not only to infiltrate one but everyone, including the girl with the good attributes with whom he spends the night playing video games. Their plans are going as desired, but they still need to keep a low profile. Their main goal is to eliminate Kensher, so they keep him under surveillance 24/7. While they are finalizing the details of their plan, they decide to create an event called the Warrior Tournament, where all participants must complete a long journey, which essentially is a marathon through the entire sacred land. Lash Era sees this as a great opportunity for betting, so he starts a business that doesn't go very well since everyone bets on Kensher, which would quickly bankrupt him. Even the bandits bet on him. With everyone going crazy over the protagonist, Mexia requests authorization to confine him. This seems to work out well since the woman decides to teach the protagonist some very juicy things to prepare him for the big event. The day of the tournament arrives, and while everyone runs, the protagonist stays behind counting numbers. When the president asks him why, he says that according to some rules he was given, he should count up to 10,000 and carry that chain to run with. This was a lie, as Lashera was scheming for him to lose. Realizing he was falling into the trap, he runs quickly. Along the way, they try to divert him several times, but he eventually finds the real path, leaving all the opponents behind and quickly taking second place. He faces Aura in a death match, but for a moment he thinks he should let himself lose. When he slows down, Chea scolds him, telling him that if he loses, she will take away all his crystals. The guy switches to automatic mode and starts running fast, leaving everything behind. Even after winning, he doesn't stop. The girls use the mecha to try to neutralize him, and Chea manages to stop him. Thanks to an explosion from the mecha, the protagonist ends up by the side of a lake, where Aura helps him. There, the waifu confesses her love, and just as she's about to ask him to be her boyfriend, the others arrive and interrupt the sweet moment. Yulite, Mest, and their waifus gather, and they decide it's time to deal with Kensher. However, the older blonde tells them to calm down since they can't go in recklessly to eliminate the protagonist. They need more data because if they go against him, he has the ability to take them all out if they fight without mechas. So for now, they let it go. However, Mest's maid is somewhat distracted and lost, as Mest no longer treats her as before, always saying nasty things and despising her. It's clear that since he now has a new attractive waifu to dine with, he no longer wants this one. So while Kensher is in the forest, she tries to eliminate him, sacrificing her life in a deadly trap. However, thanks to the help of the masked waifu, they are both saved. The masked waifu tells them that a storm is coming to the sacred land soon, and that things won't be so nice. Mest and his bandit group manage to take control of the sacred land's security room. At that moment, he gives the order to start chaos throughout the academy. The huge explosions scare the students, who have no idea what's happening. Lithia, seeing the chaos, tries to communicate with the control room, but all communications have been intercepted. However, this incredibly powerful old lady manages to figure out who is behind the attack and that Mest and his bandits have taken control of the sacred land. Her great cunning allows her to escape and reach the principal, who quickly learns everything that's going on and deduces that this is likely an attack from Straya, which is governed by Babylon. The principal asks Lashera for help, using her swan as a means of evacuation for all the students, as Babylon is there because of her. Meanwhile, the protagonist, with the help of Coletas, uses small mechas to distract the enemies while the students are evacuated. Kensher, knowing that Aura is always shy when she wakes up, decides to save her. With an epic entrance, he defeats the enemies threatening Aura's life. Babylon's massive ship is getting closer to its target, but an unexpected visitor appears, the damn beautiful Flora. The waifu comes to help the students, using her enormous mecha as a war tank to clash with Straya. Both ships are exchanging fire, while the president at the academy decides it's time to help the students, activating a platform that deploys a psychogen. However, the enemy tries to eliminate her before she can use the ship. In the midst of this, the protagonist saves the girls. Seeing many students being killed, he gets angry and decides to get off the ship to use the psychogen. Kensher, unafraid to reveal his secret, runs to the ship, where he is protected by Juan. Upon reaching the device, Kensher makes Mest soil his pants. When Kensher makes contact with the ship, A problem arises as it begins to emit a huge white light. There was a myth that a being of light would save the world, while a dark one would destroy it. Apparently, Kenshir is that savior. With his immense power and speed, he begins to destroy all the psychogens. People can't believe the protagonist is a pilot of these mechas, but thanks to his ability, the evacuation becomes faster. However, in the confusion, Mexia disappears. Being smart, the protagonist directs the fight to the warrior arena. There, he uses the massive number of pillars to his advantage, taking out each enemy one by one. Mest, in his desperation to kill Kenshir, ends up being cornered by him. Thanks to one of his helpers, Mest narrowly escapes certain death. Then Babylon finally reaches her goal, activating a ritual to awaken a special psychogen. At that moment, the place begins to tremble, and we see Mexia in the Sacred Institute's mecha, her eyes blank as she begins to collapse. It turns out Babylon tells everyone that Mexia was created with the principles of a psychogen, and thus she contains nothing less than a doll. This woman instantly revives the sacred mecha, which starts absorbing the enemy mechas. Chea, seeing that her sister is doomed, falls into depression, but somehow Doll is still her sister at heart, telling her to evacuate soon. The girl faces our protagonist, where the waifu asks Kenshir to come with her, as they have Mexia's memories. However, their conversation can't finish because once the evacuation is complete, Flora fires a huge projectile into the area, the explosion sending our protagonist flying, but he is rescued by the Swan ship. Despite everyone surviving, the sacred land has been taken. The enemy has managed to acquire the powerful Gaia shield from the Babylon relics, a legendary artifact with immense offensive power. However, their goals don't stop there. They're also planning to take the Swan Fortress and several districts. Chiaya, still hopelessly infatuated with Mest and lost in thought, is approached by Mest's maid, who was evacuated. She shows her a message from her master, who warns that Kenshir is dangerous. As you can imagine, this starts planting doubts in her mind, making her side with Mest. Given how naive and obsessed she is with him, she decides to help with his request to eliminate the protagonist. Meanwhile, the church and the director discover that the protagonist comes from another world. It seems he was sent to this world, but he's a good guy who always tries to help out whenever he can, so there's no need to worry. As night falls, Chiaya tries to take down the protagonist, but can't bring herself to do it because she's grown fond of him. Due to this internal conflict and her misplaced feelings, she decides to escape with Mest's maid to their hideout. Once there, Mest tells her she was an idiot for not killing the protagonist, but insists that his plans will proceed as he wishes. He then removes a tracking device, and Lashera appears, warning that trouble is on the way. At that moment, the Swan ship appears in the enemy's field with the goal of rescuing Chiaya. Mest claims they were the ones who fell into the trap, activating a mechanism that nullifies the ship's ENA, the power that keeps it flying. Chiaya realizes she was used to capture the princess and take control of the ship. As enemy mechs head towards the Swan to invade it, one steps out to defend it, while Kenshin sneaks around the enemy to take them all on. Seeing the support of her friends, Chiaya decides to leave Mest and join the protagonist, who uses his massive white psychogen to take down the underground reactors, preventing the Swan from flying. After dealing with several enemies, Doll appears with the Gaia shield, launching a massive attack that narrowly misses destroying the Swan. The large hole it creates gives everyone a chance to escape. On their way, they consider going to the Aura Kingdom to request support from the king. Since the protagonist has become well known, it would be easier to get help from other kingdoms. Upon arriving at the Elven Kingdom, the old king agrees to help, but on the condition that the protagonist must defeat him in a competition similar to a warrior tournament, navigating through several dangerous forests full of traps. The protagonist manages this perfectly, but ends up being late after collecting fruit. Seeing the protagonist's foolishness, the king attacks him while he's distracted, but Kenshin easily takes him down. The old man realizes he can trust him and even considers him a potential husband for his daughter. However, this happiness is short-lived as the Koro alarm is activated. Mest and his gang have arrived in the area with Doll's help. Quickly, the Elven King asks the protagonist to help evacuate everyone, as the priority is to save the citizens in the area. Meanwhile, the king decides to fight against Mest and his minions. The king, in an impressive display, starts giving them a thorough beating until Doll arrives in style, ready to mop the floor with the old man. Just as she is about to finish him off with Gaia, the protagonist appears, resembling Midoriya with his mech. The legendary battle between their mechs begins anew, but Mest, always meddling, keeps interrupting because he's annoyed that the protagonist is stealing his spotlight. During the fight, the protagonist lands a solid hook to use Mest as bait, distracting Doll and attacking her from a blind spot. Despite defending the impact, it causes a malfunction in the psychogen's mechanism, paralyzing her. Kenshin is ordered to retreat since everyone has been evacuated from the capital, making further combat unnecessary. After leaving, they learn that the church headquarters and Havanawa are under another attack. This causes concern for Lashera, as Havanawa is where Maria lives. On their way, they receive a distress signal from someone at the church. Lashera sends Kenshin and Chiaya to the rescue, where they manage to save a church emissary named Leia. Leia was sent there because the church ordered Lashera to release the protagonist and hand him over for their use, or more precisely, to let him decide how the nations should be governed. While they arrive at Havanawa, they are attacked by the Meteor Falls, a defense system taken over by the bandits with good attributes. While the protagonist and the others do their best to bring it down, Yukine appears in her Psychogen, giving everyone a brief opportunity by lowering the enemy's shield. The protagonist, using his impressive power, takes down the ship, and they are then guided by Yukine to the underground city of Havanawa, where everyone is still alive. Once reunited, they tell Lashera that a decision must be made about who has authority over Kenshin. Several important figures from all the kingdoms have gathered to form an alliance, but since everyone wants the protagonist, there's some discord. This saddens Lashera, as she fears the protagonist will abandon her, but he has no intention of doing so, since she was the only one who gave him a home when he was sent to this world. Thus, the protagonist has no intention of aligning with any country or organization, declaring the Swan as his place of residence and establishing it as a neutral, independent zone, effectively making him the new king of the Swan City or area. As the hours pass, their next plan is to reach the barrier workshop to obtain a weapon or something to enhance the protagonist's abilities. The Gaia shield is incredibly powerful, but they don't anticipate running into Ceres along the way. Seeing that Ceres is in trouble, the protagonist heads over to rescue his friend, but ends up falling into a trap set by Ceres. The trap is a mutual destruction scenario because Ceres' girlfriend was kidnapped by Mest, and the only way for her to be freed was if Ceres destroyed the protagonist. However, Kenshin unleashes an enormous amount of power, allowing him to absorb the bomb's massive energy and hurl it away as if it were a projectile. But the tremendous power he used triggers his frenzy mode, causing him to become almost insane and ruthless. While he creates chaos, destroying everything in his path, Aura and Chiaya manage to rescue Ceres' girlfriend from the bandits. Meanwhile, the protagonist takes out several enemies, causing Mest to be paralyzed with fear, barely escaping the fight as Kenshin clearly intended to crush him. After the chaos, they finally reach the Sacred Land, where we meet Kaia's father. He sends the protagonist to the lab for some tests. Leia, feeling unwell, is taken to a room to rest. There, Kaia's father reveals an important secret. Psychogens were originally robots created for entertainment and sports, but over time, they began to be used as real combat machines, leading to many pilots losing their lives. To quickly and effectively find good pilots, they created crystal cores, which stored all the skills and experience of a pilot. If a pilot died, the crystal could be used in a new artificially created body, retaining and even improving those skills. However, this creation led to the world going somewhat out of control, and many countries were destroyed. The only psychogen that remained unaffected was this incredibly powerful one that could still walk on the ENAC. It's revealed that Mexia was an artificial waifu created to destroy it, one of 3 waifus. According to the story, Mexia and 2 other dolls challenged Gaia and won when one of them sacrificed itself. After that, Mexia returned to a childlike state and was sealed underground. One day, out of curiosity, they found her, and the protagonist adopted her as his daughter. At that moment, they hear a huge commotion. Doll and several troops have breached the Allied defenses. They quickly begin to evacuate. When the protagonist goes to find Leia, he realizes she is being pursued by Chiaya and her father, as Leia is the masked waifu and could be of great help to him. As best as they can, Kenshin clears a path to the Swan for their escape, leaving Doll behind. Everyone realizes that the protagonist urgently needs a weapon. They remember that when he annihilated the enemy guards with a shield similar to Gaia's, Kenshin used projectiles based on a huge stone he had absorbed with his power. Yukine quickly suggests going to a town she knows, where they have a gigantic rock that literally reaches the clouds. After the townspeople agree, the protagonist and his waifus start working, taking turns during the night. However, just as they were about to finish, enemies show up again to cause trouble. They all fire at once, and Kenshin, Aura, and Chiaya struggle to defend themselves, as losing the rock would mean losing all their hard work. Yukine decides to take the bullet impacts, but then students from the academy arrive with the director and the student council president to offer their support. This gives the protagonist the chance to transform the enormous stone into a powerful rock sword, which retains its gravity with a special ring. After defeating the enemies, while resting on the ship and planning to finally take down the Babylon Empire, the protagonist falls ill with a fever. While he is in his quarters, he receives a visit from the well-endowed waifu. I know I could use her name, but this is simpler. She tells him that when Gaia began to destroy the psychogens, since the artificial beings could have children and marry, they decided to send one artificial being to another world and later summon the human born from that marriage. Indeed, Kenshin is that human. Additionally, certain biological waves prevent damage among puppets. Mexia takes the protagonist to activate a bracelet she possesses, which triggers a live hologram with Babylon. By saying certain words, Babylon activates control over the puppets. Just like Doll is controlled. The old man tries to get the protagonist on his side, but Kenshin, being incredibly strong and highly rebellious, does not follow the orders and deactivates the protocol, showing the old man who's really in charge. Hearing the protagonist's shouts, they rush to see what's happening. Mexia deactivates the gravity device of the protagonist's sword, causing immense weight on the ship and altering its trajectory. Taking advantage of the situation, she escapes, and once Kenshin recovers, he can leave to prevent the swan from crashing. In a scene change, all the kingdoms allied with Kenshin head to the sacred land to reclaim it. The plan was simple: destroy the first defense and use distractions so that the swan could infiltrate, allowing Kenshin to reach Gaia and prevent his resurrection. Everything went perfectly, with the elves taking down the first defense, which was abandoned under Babylon's orders, while the president dealt with the other defenses in a fierce fight. However, Mest suddenly appears, challenging Kenshin to a 1v1 duel. At first, they think he shouldn't accept, but out of knightly honor, Kenshin cannot refuse the challenge. In the duel against Lord Mest, Kenshin uses all his power and quickly defeats him. However, the time spent fighting Mest was enough for Gaia to awaken. Despite this, Kenshin manages to give Gaia a good fight, which displeases Lord Babylon. So, Babylon performs a fusion with Gaia, achieving a perfect transformation. Seeing that the situation is becoming extremely dangerous, Kenshin asks everyone to withdraw as far as possible. Lashera and the others remain calm because all enemy control and defensive points had been recaptured. However, the girls are eager to help Kenshin, and as they head to support him, they remember that Mest provoked Kenshin to fight because he had a powerful bomb, the same bomb series used. They decide to channel all their energy into the reactor to push it to its limit so Kenshin can use it again. This seems like a good plan until Gaia swallows the massive projectile and continues as if nothing happened. Kenshin hears Mexia asking for help. Determined and with the moral support of all the girls, he unleashes a fierce barrage of attacks on Babylon. In the midst of this, Kenshin somehow makes his sword invisible, allowing him to penetrate Gaia's massive defense and decapitate it. After saving Mexia, who protects him with her attributes, Babylon appears in oil mode, where the blonde Ulite emerges with a powerful weapon to end his life. At this point, Kenshin collapses and tells the protagonist that he's going to meet St. Peter, taking on Leia's appearance. It turns out that this guy is a 2-in-1 package with a surprise. This is because Nysa, the masked girl who helped the protagonist on several occasions but was ambiguous as either an enemy or ally, was actually Leia and Ulite. This happened because their father implanted a crystal core in his brother when they were children. However, the core consumed that sibling, and for some strange reason, their tissues fused. Depending on the moment and which will is stronger, it can be either Nysa or Ulite. Once the villain is defeated, everyone celebrates. But the protagonist still has something to deal with. All the girls from the kingdoms want Tio marry him, so now he will have Tio run for his life. As if they catch him, they'll leave him soulless, if you know what I mean. If you want more epic anime, comment the word mechas, and with that, I'll find you another anime similar to this one that you might enjoy.